Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Seek Hour, the podcast where we explore ancient philosophies and timeless teachings to find wisdom for our modern lives. I'm your host, Sarah.
And I'm your other host, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here and to start this journey with all of you.
We're so excited to have you with us. The goal of Seek Hour is pretty simple. We live in a world that's faster, louder, and more complicated than ever before. We're constantly bombarded with information, with expectations, with anxieties. And it often feels like we're navigating this complex world without a map.
That's a perfect way to put it, Sarah. The thing is, humanity has been dealing with fundamental problems for millennia. Problems of loss, of frustration, of finding meaning, of dealing with difficult people. And for thousands of years, the greatest minds in history have been thinking about these exact problems. They've been creating the maps.
And those maps are what we want to explore. We'll be diving into different schools of thought, from Zen Buddhism in the East to Epicureanism in ancient Greece, and seeing what practical tools and perspectives they offer us today. And for our very first episode, we're starting with a philosophy that has seen a massive resurgence in popularity recently. You see it being quoted by CEOs in Silicon Valley, coaches in the NFL, and people all over the world looking for resilience and peace of mind. Today, we're talking about Stoicism.
It's the perfect place to start because at its core, Stoicism is a philosophy designed for action. It's not about sitting in an ivory tower and contemplating the meaning of a word. It was designed to be used in the trenches of daily life, whether that trench was the Roman Forum, a battlefield, or for us, a stressful Zoom meeting or a backed-up freeway.
Exactly. So, Alex, to kick things off for our listeners who might have only heard the word or who might have a certain image in their head when they hear it, let's start with the most basic question of all. What exactly is Stoicism?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's a great place to begin. The common modern definition of the word stoic with a lowercase s is someone who is emotionless, who endures pain without showing any feeling. You know, the strong, silent type with a stiff upper lip.
Right, like Spock from Star Trek or something. All logic, no emotion.
Precisely. And that is the single biggest misconception about Stoicism with a capital S. The ancient Stoics were not trying to eliminate emotions. They were not robots. They experienced the full range of human emotions just like we do. Joy, anger, grief, love. The goal of Stoicism isn't to eradicate emotions, but to avoid being ruled by them. It's about developing a kind of mental and emotional fortitude so that you are not thrown into a state of turmoil by events, especially events outside of your control.
So it's not about not feeling anger, but not letting that anger cause you to say something you'll regret for the next week.
Exactly. It's about creating a space between an event and your reaction to it. In that space lies your power to choose a wise, rational, and virtuous response. At its heart, Stoicism is a practical philosophy for flourishing, or what the Greeks called eudaimonia. It's a system for training your mind to achieve a state of inner tranquility, resilience, and moral virtue, regardless of your external circumstances. It's an operating system for the human mind, designed to help you live a good life.
An operating system for the human mind. I love that. It makes it sound so practical. So, where did this all come from? Who were the original Stoics? I think putting a face to the philosophy always helps make it more tangible.
Absolutely. The story of Stoicism starts in Athens around 300 BC with a man named Zeno of Citium. Zeno was a wealthy merchant who was sailing across the Mediterranean when he was shipwrecked. He lost everything. All his material wealth was at the bottom of the sea. He washed ashore in Athens, a complete stranger with nothing to his name.
Wow, that's about as bad a day as you can have. I can't imagine how devastating that would be.
You would think so. But Zeno, instead of despairing, wandered into a bookstore in Athens. There, he started reading Xenophon's Memorabilia, which are dialogues about the philosopher Socrates. He was so inspired by the portrayal of Socrates, this wise, calm, virtuous man, that he asked the bookseller where he could find men like that. The bookseller pointed to a famous Cynic philosopher who was walking by, and Zeno became his student. Eventually, Zeno developed his own philosophy and began teaching it from a public colonnade in Athens known as the Stoa Poikile, or the painted porch. That's where the name comes from. Stoic simply means a person of the porch.
So the entire philosophy was born from a disaster, from losing everything, and then instead of seeing it as an end, seeing it as a new beginning. That's a powerful origin story.
It's the perfect origin story for Stoicism because it contains the core idea. It's not what happens to you that matters, but how you respond to it. Zeno could have spent the rest of his life being bitter about the shipwreck. Instead, he later joked, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered a shipwreck." He saw it as the event that set him on the path to wisdom.
That's incredible. So Zeno was the founder. Who are the other big names we should know? When I hear about Stoicism, I often hear about Romans, not Greeks.
That's right. The philosophy was born in Greece, but it really flourished and was preserved in the Roman Empire. There are three key Roman Stoics whose writings have survived and formed the bedrock of what we know about Stoicism today. They are Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. And what's fascinating is how different their stations in life were.
Okay, tell me about them. Let's start with Seneca.
Seneca the Younger was a hugely influential figure in Rome. He was a playwright, a political advisor, and one of the wealthiest men in the Roman Empire. He was actually the tutor and later advisor to the infamous Emperor Nero. So here you have a man operating at the highest levels of power, dealing with immense stress, political intrigue, and the constant threat of danger from a volatile emperor. His writings, mostly in the form of letters to a friend, are incredibly practical. He writes about dealing with anger, shortness of life, managing grief, and finding tranquility amidst chaos. His life was a testament to his philosophy. He was eventually ordered by Nero to commit suicide, and by all accounts, he faced his death with the calm and courage his philosophy preached.
So we have a man of immense power and wealth trying to be a good person in a very corrupt and dangerous environment. That's one end of the spectrum. Who's next?
Next is Epictetus, and he's on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Epictetus was born a slave. His name literally means acquired. He lived in Rome, and his leg was deliberately broken by his master, leaving him lame for the rest of his life. So here is a man who owned nothing, not even his own body. He had no control over his external circumstances in the most extreme sense. And yet, he became one of the most revered Stoic teachers.
From a slave to a great teacher. How did that happen?
He was eventually granted his freedom, and he opened his own philosophy school. He taught that while his body might be enslaved, his mind, his will, his faculty of choice was always free. No one could force him to assent to a false judgment. No one could take away his virtue. His teachings were written down by his student Arrian in two books, the Discourses and the Enchiridion, which means the handbook. And his message is perhaps the most powerful because of his circumstances. If a man who was a disabled slave could find freedom and tranquility through this philosophy, what excuse do we have?
That's a deeply humbling perspective. The contrast between Seneca, the wealthy advisor, and Epictetus, the former slave, is astounding. They both found the same core truths from completely opposite positions in society.
It shows the universality of the philosophy. It wasn't just for the rich or the poor. It was for any human being seeking to live well. And that brings us to the third and perhaps most famous Stoic, Marcus Aurelius.
The Roman emperor.
The Roman emperor, yes. Arguably the most powerful man in the world at the time. He was known as the last of the 5 good emperors, and he ruled during a time of near constant warfare on the frontiers, political plots at home, and a devastating plague that swept through the empire. And every morning, in his tent on the battlefield or in his palace in Rome, he would write to himself. He wasn't writing for publication. He was writing a personal journal, a series of notes and reminders to himself on how to be a better person, a better leader, and a better Stoic.
And that journal is what we now know as the Meditations.
Exactly. And it's one of the most profound books ever written. You have the most powerful man in the world reminding himself to be humble, to be patient, to be tolerant of others, to not be angered by insults, and to get out of bed in the morning and do his job for the common good even when he didn't feel like it. His writings are a testament to the fact that no amount of external power or success can grant you inner peace. That is a project you have to work on internally every single day.
So we have Zeno, the shipwrecked merchant founder, then Seneca, the powerful statesman, Epictetus, the slave-turned-teacher, and Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king. That is an incredible range of human experience.
It is. And it's why Stoicism has such broad appeal. It's not a philosophy for a specific type of person in a specific situation. It's a philosophy for human beings navigating the challenges of being human.
Okay, so we have the who and the what. Let's get into the how. You mentioned that Stoicism is like an operating system. What are the core principles or the core apps of the system? If a listener wants to start thinking like a Stoic, where do they begin?
The absolute cornerstone, the foundational principle of all of Stoicism, is what's known as the Dichotomy of Control. Epictetus opens his handbook with this very idea. He says, some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us.
Simple enough. What falls into each category?
According to the Stoics, the only things that are truly up to us are our own actions, our judgments, and our volition, our will. Basically our inner world, our thoughts and our choices about how to respond to things. That's it. That's the entire list.
Okay, so what's on the not up to us list?
Everything else. And this is the crucial part. The list of things not up to us includes our body, whether it's healthy or sick, tall or short. It includes our reputation, what other people think of us. It includes our wealth and possessions. It includes the actions of other people. It includes the weather, the economy, traffic, getting a promotion, and ultimately, life and death itself. All of these things are external to our reasoned choice. We might be able to influence them, but we cannot ultimately control them.
So let's take a modern example. I'm giving a huge presentation at work. I've prepared for weeks. What's up to me and what isn't?
A perfect example. What's up to you is the quality of your preparation, how thoroughly you researched, how many times you practiced your speech, the mindset you choose to adopt before you walk in, calm, confident, focused, the way you answer questions, whether you are patient and respectful with your audience. These things are entirely within your control. What's not up to you is whether the projector suddenly dies, whether your boss is in a terrible mood because of something that happened at home, whether a key stakeholder gets called into an emergency meeting and misses it, whether the company's priorities have shifted and they're no longer interested in your project, and ultimately, whether they approve your proposal or not. You can influence the outcome, but you don't control it.
And the Stoic idea is that we cause ourselves immense suffering by worrying about the things on that second list.
Immense and unnecessary suffering. The Stoics would say that our anxiety, our anger, our frustration, almost all our negative emotions stem from a fundamental error, trying to control what we can't and neglecting what we can. We get angry in a traffic jam, as if our rage could somehow make the cars move. We get anxious about what someone thinks of us, as if we could crawl inside their head and change their opinion. We get despondent when we get sick, as if our despair was a cure.
So the practical advice here is to consciously, throughout the day, categorize things. To ask yourself, is this thing that's upsetting me right now something that is up to me or not up to me?
Exactly. It's a mental filter. When you feel a negative emotion rising, you pause and apply this filter. Let's say someone insults you. The insult itself is an external event. It's not up to you. It's just words coming out of another person's mouth. What is up to you is your judgment about that insult. You can choose to judge it as a catastrophic attack on your character that must be avenged, which will lead to anger and conflict. Or you can choose to judge it as meaningless noise from someone who is likely misinformed or unhappy themselves and let it go. Your tranquility is found in focusing only on your own judgment, which you control, not on their words, which you don't.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but also incredibly difficult. It requires a lot of self-awareness.
It does. It's a practice. That's why Marcus Aurelius was writing this stuff down every single day. He needed the constant reminder. It's not a switch you flip once. It's a muscle you have to build. You start small. The next time you're in a long line at the grocery store, notice the feeling of impatience. Recognize that the speed of the line is not up to you. What is up to you is how you spend that time. You can fume, or you can practice your breathing, or you can think about what you're grateful for. You are training your mind, one small moment at a time.
The dichotomy of control. That's a huge one. It feels like you could spend a lifetime just mastering that one concept. What's another core idea that builds on this? I've heard the phrase Amor Fati. It sounds very dramatic. It means love of fate, right?
It does, and it is a dramatic concept. It's one of the most challenging and most beautiful ideas in Stoicism. If the dichotomy of control is about distinguishing what you can and can't control, Amor Fati is the next step. It's about actively loving and embracing everything that happens, especially the things you can't control.
Loving them? That seems like a stretch. I mean, I can learn to accept that I got a flat tire, but how can I love it? How can someone love getting a terrible diagnosis or losing their job?
It's a great and very natural question. The Stoics weren't delusional. They weren't suggesting you should be gleeful about tragedy. The love in Amor Fati is not a romantic, happy-clappy love. It's a deep, profound acceptance and affirmation of reality. It's the mindset that says, this is what happened. It is now part of the unchangeable past. I will not waste a single second wishing it were different. Instead, I will treat it as if I chose it myself, and I will find the opportunity and the good in it.
So it's about transforming obstacles into opportunities.
Precisely. The Stoic sees every event not as good or bad in itself, but simply as raw material. It's fuel for the fire. A bad event is an opportunity to practice courage. A frustrating person is an opportunity to practice patience. An unexpected failure is an opportunity to learn a valuable lesson. Marcus Aurelius has a famous quote about this. He says, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."
What stands in the way becomes the way. Can you unpack that a bit?
Think about that flat tire. The obstacle, the tire, prevents you from getting to your destination, but it also becomes your new path. Your task is no longer drive to the meeting. Your new task is change the tire with skill and without complaint. The obstacle itself presents you with a new set of actions where you can practice virtue. You can practice patience, resourcefulness, and calm under pressure. You can turn a frustrating event into a training ground for your character. Loving your fate means seeing this event not as a cosmic injustice, but as the perfect, custom-designed workout for your soul that life has just handed you.
That reframing is profound. So if someone gets laid off from their job, which is a huge blow for anyone,
The non-Stoic response might be despair, anger, resentment. Why me? This is unfair. These are all judgments based on wishing reality were different. The Amor Fati response would be to first accept it fully. This has happened. It is now a fact. Then to embrace it. This is the path I am now on. I will not fight it. I will work with it. And finally, to find the opportunity. Perhaps this is the push I needed to change careers. Perhaps this is an opportunity to spend more time with my family while I search for something new. Perhaps the job I lost was making me miserable anyway, and this is a hidden blessing. It's an active, creative response to misfortune.
It's taking ultimate responsibility for your own experience of life, regardless of what life throws at you.
That's the perfect way to put it. It's saying yes to life, the whole of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's all just material for you to shape with your own virtue.
Okay, so we have the dichotomy of control to filter events, and Amor Fati to embrace them. I've also heard of a Stoic practice that sounds, well, a little bit grim. The premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This sounds like the opposite of positive thinking. Aren't we supposed to visualize success?
We are, and there's a place for that, but the Stoics had a complementary practice. Premeditatio malorum is a form of negative visualization. It involves taking time, perhaps in the morning, to think about all the things that could go wrong during the day or in your life. Your car might not start, you might get into an argument with your partner, you could lose your wallet. You could even go bigger and meditate on the possibility of losing your job, your health, or even your life.
Okay, that sounds like a recipe for anxiety. Why on earth would anyone do that?
It seems counterintuitive, I know, but it has two profound psychological benefits. The first is that it inoculates you against shock and despair. If you've already thought about the possibility of your presentation failing, and you've mentally rehearsed how you would handle it with grace and composure, then if it actually happens, it won't be a devastating shock. You've already visited that scenario. The surprise is what often breaks us. Seneca said that what is anticipated is less crushing. It robs misfortune of its sting.
So it's like a fire drill for your mind. You practice for the emergency so you don't panic when it happens.
Exactly. You're building psychological resilience. But there's a second, and I think even more beautiful benefit. When you spend a few moments contemplating the loss of the things you hold dear, and then you open your eyes and see that they are still there, your health is still intact, your loved ones are still with you, your coffee is hot, your car started, it fills you with an immense sense of gratitude.
Ah, so by imagining life without these things, you stop taking them for granted.
Precisely. We suffer from what psychologists call hedonic adaptation. We get used to the good things in our lives, and they become invisible to us. We only notice them when they're gone. Negative visualization reverses that. It makes the ordinary extraordinary. After you've spent a minute imagining your life without your partner, the simple act of them walking into the room becomes a source of profound joy. After you've imagined spilling your morning coffee all over yourself, simply tasting that first sip becomes a little miracle. It's a powerful gratitude practice.
So it's not about being a pessimist. It's about being a prepared and grateful realist.
That's a perfect summary. You're not dwelling on the negative in the way that makes you miserable. You're strategically visiting it in a controlled way to make you stronger and more appreciative of the present moment.
This is all starting to form a really coherent picture. Dichotomy of control, amor fati, premeditatio malorum, they all seem to point toward one central goal. You mentioned the word eudaimonia earlier, and also virtue. What is the ultimate goal for a Stoic? Is it happiness? Is it success?
The ultimate goal is eudaimonia, which is often translated as happiness or flourishing, but a better translation might be living in harmony with your own best self, or living a life of moral excellence. And for the Stoics, the one and only thing required to achieve this state was virtue.
Virtue. That's a word we don't use very much anymore, and when we do, it can sound a little bit old-fashioned or sanctimonious. What did the Stoics mean by virtue?
For the Stoics, virtue was the sole good. Everything else, health, wealth, reputation, pleasure, was considered an indifferent.
And indifferent. So they didn't care about being healthy or successful?
Not quite. They classified indifference into two categories, preferred and dispreferred. Health is a preferred indifferent.
It's better to be healthy than sick. Wealth is a preferred indifferent. It's better to be well off than in poverty. All things being equal, you should absolutely strive for these things. However, and this is the key, they have no bearing on your moral worth or your ability to live a good life. Your character is independent of your circumstances.
So, a virtuous person who is poor and sick is living a better life, a more flourishing life, than a corrupt person who is rich and healthy.
According to the Stoics, yes, a million times yes. Because the rich, corrupt person has a diseased soul, a disordered mind. They are a slave to their desires and fears. The poor, virtuous person, on the other hand, possesses inner tranquility and a clear conscience. They are free. They have achieved eudaimonia. The only real good is a good character. The only real evil is a bad character. Everything else is just externals.
Okay, so if virtue is the one thing that truly matters, what is it? Is it just one thing, or are there different kinds?
The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues that encompass all the others. They are wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These 4 virtues are the pillars of a good life. They are the practical application of all the principles we've been talking about.
Okay, so let's break those down. Let's start with wisdom.
Wisdom, for the Stoics, is practical wisdom. It's the ability to navigate complex situations in a logical, informed, and tranquil way. It is fundamentally the ability to know the difference between good, bad, and indifferent. It's the knowledge of what is truly up to us and what is not. So the dichotomy of control is an expression of the virtue of wisdom.
So it's not about being book-smart genius, but about having sound judgment in life.
Exactly. It's about seeing the world clearly, without the distortions of fear, desire, or ego. It's the master virtue that guides the others. You need wisdom to know when to be courageous and how to be just.
That makes sense. What about the second one, justice?
Justice, for the Stoics, is about our relationship with other people. It's the knowledge of what we owe to others. Because we are social creatures, our own good is tied up with the good of the whole community, or what they called the cosmopolis, the city of the world. Justice means treating every human being with fairness, respect, and kindness, because we are all part of the same human family. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to act for the common good. He saw his role as emperor not as a privilege, but as a duty to serve others.
So this pushes back against the idea of Stoicism being a purely selfish pursuit of one's own tranquility.
It completely demolishes it. A Stoic cannot be a good Stoic without being a good person to others. Your inner peace is not an excuse to withdraw from the world. It's the foundation that allows you to engage with the world more effectively and compassionately. Justice is about seeing the humanity in everyone, even people you find difficult.
Which leads us nicely to the third virtue, courage. I think we all have an idea of what courage is, but what's the Stoic take?
The common idea of courage is physical bravery on the battlefield, and that's certainly part of it. But for the Stoics, courage was much broader. It's moral courage. It's the courage to do the right thing even when it's hard or unpopular. It's the courage to face not just physical threats, but also emotional ones, the courage to have a difficult conversation, the courage to stand up for your principles, the courage to admit when you're wrong, the courage to face your own mortality. It's about enduring hardship with resilience and not backing down from your duties.
So practicing Amor Fati when you get bad news would be an act of courage.
A profound act of courage. Facing reality on its own terms without flinching is the essence of Stoic courage. It's the strength to bear what must be borne.
And the final one, temperance.
Temperance, or moderation, is the virtue of self-control. It's the ability to master your own desires and appetites. It's about not overindulging in pleasure, food, drink, or any other impulse. It's about maintaining a sense of balance and discipline in your life. This isn't about asceticism or rejecting all pleasure. The Stoics enjoyed life. But they believed that true freedom comes from not being a slave to your desires. If you need that fancy car or that expensive wine to be happy, then you are not free. You are a servant to that thing.
Temperance is the virtue of wanting what you already have and not being thrown off balance by desire or temptation.
So wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. They all seem to interlink and support each other. You need wisdom to know what is a moderate amount. You need courage to resist temptation, and you need to apply it all justly.
They are a unified whole. The Stoics believed you couldn't truly have one without the others. They are four facets of a single gem, which is virtue itself. And the daily practice of Stoicism is about trying to live by these four virtues in every situation you face.
This has been an incredible overview, Alex. We've covered the history, the key figures, the core principles like the dichotomy of control and Amor Fati, and the ultimate goal of living a life of virtue. It's a lot to take in, so let's bring it down to the ground level. If someone listening right now is inspired by this and wants to start today, what does a practical daily Stoic routine look like? What are one or two things that can actually do when they turn this podcast off?
This is the most important part, because Stoicism is a philosophy of action. The best way to start is to incorporate small, simple practices into your morning and evening. This is what Marcus Aurelius did, what Seneca recommended. Let's start with the morning. Before you even look at your phone, before the world rushes in, take 5 minutes. You can do this while your coffee is brewing. First, practice a bit of premeditatio malorum. Ask yourself, what challenges might I face today? I might encounter a rude person. I might get frustrating news. My project might hit a snag. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, say to yourself in the morning, I shall meet today ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, uncharitable men.
That's a heck of a way to start the day.
But he continues, he says the reason they are this way is because they don't know the difference between good and evil. But you do. And he reminds himself that this person is his kin, not by blood, but by a shared rationality, and that you are meant to work together like two rows of teeth. So the point isn't to get depressed, but to prepare yourself to meet these challenges with virtue. You're setting your intention for the day. No matter what happens, I will respond with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
So you're setting your virtuous intention for the day. What else in the morning?
You can then reaffirm the dichotomy of control. Remind yourself what you control, your choices, your will, and what you don't. And finally, you can reflect on your purpose. The Stoics were big on having a sense of duty. Marcus Aurelius famously had to talk himself out of bed. He would remind himself that he had a job to do, that he was born to work for the common good. We can do the same. What is your purpose for today? It doesn't have to be grand. It could be to be a patient parent, to be a focused employee, to be a supportive friend.
So a 5-minute morning routine, prepare for challenges, reaffirm control, and set your purpose. That seems very manageable. What about the end of the day?
The evening routine is just as important. It's a philosophical audit of your day. This is a practice Seneca championed. Before you go to sleep, review your day. Again, this can be just 5 minutes. Ask yourself 3 simple questions. 1. What did I do well today, according to my values? Where did I successfully practice a virtue? 2. What did I do poorly? Where did I let my emotions get the better of me? Where did I fail to act with virtue? And 3. What can I learn from this? What will I do differently tomorrow?
It's like being your own coach.
Exactly. And it's crucial that this is done without harsh self-criticism. The point is not to beat yourself up. It's to learn and improve. Seneca said he would review his day and say to himself, I will not chide you for this now, but see that you do not do it again. It's a process of gentle but firm self-correction. Journaling is the perfect way to do this. Writing it down makes it concrete. The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius is just the world's most famous example of this kind of philosophical journal.
So a morning and evening reflection, that's a fantastic practical starting point. Are there any other in-the-moment techniques for when you're in the thick of a stressful situation during the day?
Yes. One of the most powerful is what's called the view from above. When you find yourself getting overwhelmed by a problem, a conflict at work, a personal anxiety, the Stoics recommended you practice a visualization exercise. In your mind's eye, zoom out. See yourself in the room. Then zoom out further. See the building. Zoom out to see your city, then your country, then the earth as a small blue marble in space. Then zoom out further across the vastness of cosmic time, seeing the millennia roll by before you and after you.
And what does that do?
It puts your problem in perspective. From the vantage point of the cosmos, your current source of stress, which feels so all-encompassing and important, is revealed to be incredibly small and transient. It doesn't mean your problem isn't real, but it robs it of its power to overwhelm you. It shrinks the problem down to a manageable size and helps you approach it with a sense of calm and perspective. It's a mental reset button.
The view from above. I really like that. It's like a mental drone shot of your own life. It's amazing how these techniques, which are 2,000 years old, feel like they could have been invented by a modern cognitive behavioral therapist.
Many people argue that Stoicism is the ancient grandfather of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. CBT is founded on a very similar principle. It's not events themselves that upset us, but our beliefs or interpretations of those events. And a lot of CBT involves identifying, questioning, and changing those irrational beliefs. That is pure Stoicism. The Stoics were the original cognitive therapists.
That's a fascinating connection. It really speaks to the timelessness of these ideas. Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on something we mentioned at the beginning. We're going to be covering other philosophies on this podcast, like Zen Buddhism. For a listener trying to build their own personal philosophy, how does Stoicism compare or contrast with something like Zen?
That's a great question, because there are remarkable similarities and some key differences. The similarities are striking. Both Stoicism and Zen emphasize mindfulness and being in the present moment. Both teach a form of acceptance of what is. Both aim for a state of inner tranquility that is independent of external conditions. A Zen master would be very comfortable with the dichotomy of control, even if they use different language. Both philosophies value self-discipline and training the mind.
So where do they diverge?
The primary difference is in the how and the why. Stoicism is a very rational, logical, and verbose philosophy. It relies on reason, on journaling, on dissecting your thoughts with logic. You reason your way to tranquility. Zen, however, is more experiential and aims to transcend the rational mind. Zen meditation, or zazen, is about stilling the inner monologue, not engaging with it. The goal is to reach enlightenment through direct experience by seeing the nature of reality without the filter of thought.
So one uses logic to perfect the self, and the other uses meditation to see that there is no self to perfect in a way?
That's a very insightful way to put it. Stoicism is about building a strong, virtuous self, an inner citadel. Zen is more about dissolving the ego and realizing your interconnectedness with everything. But interestingly, they often lead to very similar ethical outcomes: calmness, compassion, and a focus on the present moment. They are two different paths up the same mountain. And we will definitely be doing a deep dive into the path of Zen in a future episode.
I can't wait for that. It's clear that Stoicism offers a complete and robust toolkit for life. It's not just a collection of nice quotes, it's a real system. So, Alex, as we close out this introduction to Stoicism, what is the single most important message you'd want a listener to take away from this conversation?
If I had to boil it all down to one thing, it would be this. You have more power than you think, but it lies in a different place than you've been taught to look. We are taught to seek power over our external world, over our careers, our bank accounts, our social status. The Stoics teach that true power is internal. It is the unshakable power to choose your response in any situation. It is the power to choose virtue over vice, tranquility over turmoil, and courage over fear. That power can never be taken from you. And exercising that power every single day is the path to a good and meaningful life. Start small. Pick one idea, the dichotomy of control, the evening review, and just try it. Don't try to be a perfect Stoic overnight. Just try to be a little better today than you were yesterday.
That is a perfect place to end. For our listeners who want to dive deeper, what are the essential books you would recommend?
You have to go to the source. I would recommend starting with Marcus Aurelius, his Meditations. It's accessible and reads like a series of personal reminders. Then move on to Epictetus's Enchiridion or Handbook. It's short, sharp, and to the point. And for more narrative, practical advice, Seneca's Letters from a Stoic are wonderful. There are many great modern translations of all of these. And of course, there are excellent modern authors like Ryan Holiday who have done a fantastic job of making Stoicism accessible to a new generation.
Wonderful. We'll be sure to put those recommendations in our show notes. Alex, thank you. This has been an incredibly rich and insightful introduction to a philosophy that clearly has so much to offer us today.
The pleasure was all mine, Sarah. This is just the beginning.
And a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in to our very first episode of Seek Hour. We hope you found some value and perhaps a new tool or two to add to your own mental toolkit.
Join us next time as we continue our exploration of ancient wisdom from modern life. We'll be looking at another fascinating school of thought and asking how its teachings can help us navigate our world with more skill and grace.
Until then, be well and remember to focus on what you can control. Thanks for listening.